I'm Marcus Henderson, 52 years old, standing in the parking lot of Riverside High School, with 3 squirming 6-year-olds tugging at my hands. 25 years since graduation, and here I am at our class reunion, wondering if bringing Lily, Emma, and Ben was my smartest decision or my most foolish one. My silver Toyota minivan sits behind us, dotted with juice box stains and crackers ground into the seats. Not exactly the vehicle I'd imagined driving at this stage of life. But then again, nothing turned out quite like I'd planned. The autumn evening air carries that particular crispness. That reminds me of football games and first kisses. Oak leaves scatter across the pavement in shades of amber and rust. Through the gymnasium windows, I can see silhouettes of my former classmates, probably comparing vacation homes and retirement portfolios. "Daddy, I'm hungry," Lily announces, her dark curls bouncing as she pulls my arm. "We just ate, sweetheart," I remind her gently, adjusting the diaper bag on my shoulder. Emma, always the observer, stares up at the building. "Is this where you went to school?" "It is, honey. A very long time ago." Ben, my little explorer, has already started toward a nearby puddle. I catch him just in time, redirecting his energy toward the entrance. I take a breath. "We're here. Might as well go in." The gymnasium hasn't changed much. Same wooden floors, same basketball hoops, though someone's strung up white lights and set out tables with plastic tablecloths. A banner reads, "Class of 2000, 25 year. Reunion in our old school colors, blue and gold." Immediately I spot her, Jennifer, my ex-wife. She's standing near the refreshment table, her blonde hair styled in that same perfect wave she always favored. Designer dress, expensive jewelry catching the light. Next to her stands a man I don't recognize, tall and confident, with his hand resting possessively on her lower back. Jennifer's eyes land on me, then drop to the children. Her expression shifts through several emotions in quick succession. Surprise, disdain, something that might be satisfaction. She excuses herself from her companion and walks over. The scent of her perfume, different from what she used to wear, arrives before she does. "Marcus," she says, her voice carrying that particular tone I remember too well. "I heard you might come, and you brought them." The way she says them makes my jaw tighten. These aren't just them. These are Lily, Emma, and Ben. These are the children we created together. The children she walked away from when they were barely 2 years old. "Jennifer," I nod. "You look well." "I am well," she responds, glancing back at her companion. "That's Richard. He owns a chain of luxury car dealerships. We're engaged." "Congratulations." An awkward silence stretches between us. Emma presses closer to my leg, sensing tension the way children do. Lily stares at Jennifer with open curiosity. The afternoon sun filtered through the windows of Madison General Hospital, casting long shadows across the pediatric ward's gleaming floors. Dr. Robert Mitchell stood at the nurse's station, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed the latest patient charts. At 52, with silver threading through his dark hair and permanent creases around his eyes from years of both smiling and worrying, Robert had seen countless children pass through these corridors. But something about the name on the chart before him made him pause. Emma Chen, 7 years old, cerebral palsy, profoundly deaf. Communication through basic sign language only. Robert closed the chart slowly, removing his glasses to rub the bridge of his nose. He'd been a single father for 3 years now, ever since his wife Sarah had passed from cancer. Their own daughter, Lily, was now 10, and those years of caregiving had taught him something profound about patience. About really seeing people beyond their circumstances. "Dr. Mitchell?" Nurse Patricia called softly. She was in her early 60s, a grandmother herself, with kind eyes that had witnessed decades of hospital stories. "The little girl in 304? Emma?" "She's been asking for you." Robert looked up, surprised. "Asking for me? But she's deaf, and I don't know much sign language beyond the basics." Patricia smiled gently. "She's been signing something repeatedly. One of the interpreters came by earlier and said it looks like help and please. The thing is, doctor, she only does it when you walk past her room. She stops when other doctors come by." Robert felt something tighten in his chest. He'd noticed Emma during his rounds, of course. A small girl with dark hair and eyes that seemed to hold more understanding than most adults. Her body was rigid in her wheelchair, her movements limited by the cerebral palsy that had affected her since birth. Her father brought her in twice weekly for therapy sessions and regular checkups. "Where's her father now?" Robert asked, gathering the chart again. "Mr. Chen is at work. He's a line cook at the Chinese restaurant on 4th Street. Works double shifts most days to cover her medical expenses. He'll be here at 6 to take her home." Robert checked his watch. It was just past 4. He had rounds to finish, but something drew him toward room 304. Perhaps it was the memory of his own daughter. Those difficult months when Sarah was dying, when Lily had been so scared and needed someone to truly listen. Perhaps it was simply the human need to respond when someone asks for help. He knocked gently on the doorframe, though he knew she couldn't hear it. The gesture was automatic, respectful. When he entered, Emma's eyes found him immediately. Her face, which had been blank and distant, suddenly became animated. Her right hand, the one with the most mobility, began moving in careful, deliberate signs. Robert moved closer, kneeling beside her wheelchair so they were at eye level. He'd learned long ago that meeting children where they were, physically and emotionally, made all the difference. "Hello, Emma," he said softly, though she couldn't hear him. He touched his chest and fingerspelled his name slowly. Robert. Then he signed the word he did know. "Friend." Emma's eyes widened slightly. Her hand moved again, more insistently now. "Please help, the—" Signs were clear enough even to his untrained eye. But help with what? Robert pulled out his phone and opened a notes app, typing quickly. "What do you need help with, Emma?" "Can you show me?" He turned the phone toward her. Emma's eyes scanned the words, and Robert realized with a start that she could read quite well. Her hand moved toward the phone, and with great concentration, she managed to tap at the screen with one finger. It took time. Robert waited patiently, not rushing her, not looking away. Finally, words appeared. "Learn more words." "Father, too busy." "I have things to say." Robert felt his throat constrict. Here was this little girl, trapped in a body that wouldn't cooperate, unable to hear the world around her, and what she wanted most was simply to communicate more fully. Not fancy toys or special treatments. Just words. Just the ability to share what was inside her mind. He typed back, "I would like to help you, but I don't know much sign language. We would have to learn together." Emma's face transformed. Her smile was radiant, despite the difficulty her facial muscles had forming it. She nodded vigorously, her whole upper body moving with the effort. That evening, Robert waited until Emma's father arrived. David Chen was a slight man in his late 30s, wearing a stained cook's apron and looking exhausted in the way that only chronic worry and overwork can create. His eyes went immediately to his daughter, softening with a love that was palpable. "Mr. Chen, could I speak with you for a moment?" Robert asked gently. David's face filled with concern. "Is something wrong?" "Is Emma okay?" "She's fine," Robert assured him quickly. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something Emma asked me for." They stood in the hallway while Robert explained. David listened, his expression cycling through surprise, guilt, and then something like grief. "I know she needs more," David said quietly, his English accented but clear. "I try to learn with her at night after work, but I'm so tired. Sometimes I fall asleep during her homework time. I'm not enough for her." His voice cracked slightly. Robert shook his head. "Mr. Chen, you're working 2 jobs to give your daughter the medical care she needs. That's not enough, and that's heroic. What I'm offering is just extra help. If you'll allow it, I'd like to spend some time with Emma, learning sign language together. My daughter Lily is learning it in school as part of a special program. Maybe the 3 of us could practice together." David's eyes filled with tears. In his culture, accepting help could feel like admitting failure, Robert knew. But this wasn't about pride. This was about a little girl who wanted to share her thoughts with the world. "Why?" David asked simply. "Why would you do this? She's just a patient." Robert thought of Sarah, of those last months when neighbors and friends had rallied around their family. He thought of the casseroles left on their porch, the rides Lily received to school when he couldn't leave Sarah's bedside, the grandfather down the street who sat with Sarah so Robert could attend, Lily's school play. Kindness wasn't a transaction. It was a thread that connected humanity. She's not just a patient. Robert said quietly. "She's a little girl with something to say, and I have time to listen." The next week, Robert rearranged his schedule. 3 afternoons a week, during Emma's therapy sessions, he would spend an extra hour with her. He brought Lily along, and his daughter took to Emma immediately, the way children often do, seeing past the wheelchair and the limited movements to the person within. They started simply. Robert downloaded sign language apps, bought beginner books, and watched videos together on his tablet. Emma was a patient teacher, her face lighting up when they got signs right, gently correcting when they didn't. Lily, with the quick learning of youth, picked up signs rapidly and served as an interpreter of sorts, helping bridge the gaps. But it was the conversations themselves that transformed things. Once Emma had more words to work with, she began to share. She told them about the books she read on her special computer at home, the one with the head tracking, technology that let her turn pages with eye movements. She talked about her favorite color, purple, her favorite food, her father's egg-fried rice, and her dreams. She wanted to be a teacher one day, maybe teaching other deaf children. She also shared her loneliness,